Jeff Bezos is one of the richest people alive. He has more money than most countries. He has already been to space, and now he is trying to do something that no human being in history has ever successfully done. He is trying to stop aging at the DNA level, and he is spending $3 billion to make it happen. This is not a rumor. This is not clickbait. This is confirmed, verified, documented science, backed by 2 Nobel Prize winners, published in peer-reviewed journals, and funded by some of the most serious money on planet Earth. And when you understand what Bezos actually knows about DNA and aging that most people do not, you will understand why a man who could buy almost anything in the world is spending his billions trying to buy more time. Stay right here because this story connects real genetics, real science, and one of the most extraordinary investments ever made by any human being in history. And if you want more content like this, real DNA science behind the most famous people on Earth, hit that subscribe button right now. We publish this every week, and you do not want to miss what we are uncovering next. Let's get into it. Jeffrey Preston Bezos was born on January 12, 1964 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. His mother, Jacqueline, was 17 years old when she had him. Still in high school, raising a child with very little money, making tough choices like going without a telephone so she could afford an apartment. His biological father was not around. His stepfather, Miguel Bezos, was a Cuban immigrant who came to the United States with almost nothing and put himself through college while working. He is the man who raised Jeff and gave him his name. Bezos grew up in Houston and Miami. He graduated from high school as class valedictorian. He then went to Princeton University and graduated summa cum laude, with highest honors, in 1986 with degrees in electrical engineering and computer science. He worked on Wall Street and became the youngest senior vice president at the investment firm D.E. Shaw by the age of 26. In 1994, he quit that job, drove across the country from New York to Seattle with his then-wife Mackenzie, and started an online bookstore out of a garage. He called it Amazon. By 2018, Amazon had grown into a company worth over $1 trillion, and Bezos was named by Forbes as the richest person in modern history, with a personal net worth of $150 billion. The first person ever to be officially registered as a centibillionaire, meaning someone worth more than $100 billion. As of mid-2026, his net worth sits at approximately $280 to $284 billion, making him the 4th richest person in the world. He has built more by most measures than almost any other human being alive. He has been to space. He owns the Washington Post. He's now married to journalist and licensed helicopter pilot Lauren Sanchez after a celebrated 3-day wedding in Venice in June 2025 that reportedly cost between $46 and $56 million, with guests including Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Tom Brady. And yet with all of that, the wealth, the companies, the fame, the marriage, the spaceflight, Jeff Bezos is now focused on something that money has never been able to buy before. Something that, no matter how much you earn, how much you achieve, or how many rockets you launch, has always caught up with every human being who has ever lived. He is focused on aging, and specifically, on the DNA that controls it. In 2021, MIT Technology Review first reported that Jeff Bezos had invested in a secretive new biotech startup called Altos Labs. The company had been quietly building its team and infrastructure for months before the announcement, recruiting scientists from some of the most respected research institutions in the world. When the full picture of the company became clear, the scientific community sat up and paid attention. Altos Labs launched with over $3 billion in funding, making it one of the most heavily capitalized biotech startups in history at launch, at any point, ever. For context, most biotech startups launch with tens of millions of dollars. Some of the most successful ones in history raised a few $100 million at the beginning. Altos Labs launched with $3 billion. That number alone tells you how seriously the people behind this take what they believe is possible. Bezos was one of the key investors, alongside Russian-Israeli billionaire Yuri Milner, who has long been interested in longevity science. The company set up laboratories in 3 locations, the San Francisco Bay Area, San Diego, and Cambridge in the United Kingdom, and also established collaborations in Japan. But what made Altos Labs truly extraordinary was not the money, it was the scientific team. Altos Labs recruited Shinya Yamanaka, the Japanese scientist who won the 2012 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, to chair its scientific advisory board. They recruited Jennifer Doudna, who won the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for co-creating CRISPR, the gene editing technology that has already transformed medicine, to join their team. They brought in Steve Horvath from UCLA, who developed the biological aging clocks that can accurately measure how old a person's cells are independently of how old their birth certificate says they are. They recruited Juan Carlos Ispizua Belmonte from the Salk Institute, one of the world's leading experts in cellular reprogramming. Hal Barron, the former chief scientific officer of pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline, was named as CEO. 2 Nobel laureates, the world's leading aging clock researcher. the pioneer who applied cellular reprogramming to living animals, the former scientific leader of one of the biggest drug companies on Earth. This is not a group of people playing around. This is a group of people who genuinely believe that aging can be treated as a medical problem and possibly solved. And the science that gives them that belief starts with a discovery made in a laboratory in Kyoto, Japan in 2006. For most of human history, scientists assumed that once a cell in your body fully matured and became specialized, a skin cell, a liver cell, a brain cell, it was locked into that identity permanently. The process of development from a fertilized egg into a complete human body was thought to be a one-way street. You could only go forward. You could never reverse it. In 2006, Shinya Yamanaka proved that assumption completely wrong. Yamanaka and his colleague Kazutoshi Takahashi took fully mature adult mouse cells, skin cells called fibroblasts, and introduced just 4 specific proteins into them. These 4 proteins, which are now called the Yamanaka factors, are named OCT4, SOX2, KLF4, and CMYC. What these 4 proteins do when they enter a mature cell is essentially reprogram it. They unlock the genetic code that was locked down when the cell matured and push the cell back toward a younger, more flexible, more youthful state, called pluripotency, meaning the ability to become many different types of cell again, the way embryonic cells can. The Nobel Committee described the discovery this way. Yamanaka showed that intact mature cells in mice could be reprogrammed to become immature stem cells by introducing only a few genes. The Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine 2012 was awarded jointly to Shinya Yamanaka and to John B. Gurdon, who decades earlier had shown that the specialization of cells is reversible. Reversible. That word changed everything. If aging at the cellular level is not a fixed one-way process, if cells can be pushed back toward a younger state, then the question immediately becomes, can we do this in a living animal? Can we do it without causing cancer or other dangerous side effects? And most importantly, can we eventually do it in a human being? In 2016, Juan Carlos Ispizua Belmonte and his team at the Salk Institute, the same researcher who later joined Altos Labs, published a study showing that partial cellular reprogramming, using the Yamanaka factors, could reduce signs of aging in living mice and extend their lifespan by an average of 6 weeks. He called it the elixir of life. That was in mice, but the direction of the science was now clear. In 2020, a study successfully restored the eyesight of aging mice using the technique. And then in 2024, Altos Labs published what was described as a landmark result, a study showing that partial cellular reprogramming extended the lifespan of treated animals and improved their health markers. This study, published in Science Translational Medicine in September 2024, was the company's first major public piece of scientific evidence that the approach it is built on actually works in living organisms. This is not fringe science. This is not anti-aging cream. This is Nobel Prize-winning molecular biology, applied to the fundamental genetic machinery that controls how cells age. And Bezos has put $3 billion behind the team of scientists who are trying to take it from mice to human beings. To understand why Bezos, a man who thinks about everything in terms of long-term systems, finds this so important, you have to understand what aging actually is at the biological level. Because most people think of aging as something that simply happens, that you get older, your body wears out, and eventually it stops. But scientists have a far more specific picture of what is happening, and it starts with your DNA. Inside every cell in your body, on the tips of your chromosomes, there are structures called telomeres. They are repetitive sequences of genetic code that act as protective caps, like the plastic tip on the end of a shoelace. They stop the chromosome from fraying and degrading. Every time a cell divides, and your cells divide billions of times over a lifetime, telomeres get slightly shorter. Published research in Nature Reviews, Molecular Cell Biology, confirmed in 2024, states this clearly. Telomeres protect the ends of chromosomes, but shorten following cell division. When they become critically short or damaged, a DNA damage response is activated. The cells then become dysfunctional and trigger what scientists call senescence, or they die. Cellular senescence is one of the most critical mechanisms of aging that scientists have identified. A senescent cell is a cell that has stopped dividing but has not died. It is a damaged cell that is stuck. And here's the problem. Senescent cells do not just sit there quietly. They release inflammatory signals, chemicals that damage surrounding healthy cells, accelerate tissue decline, and spread aging like a slow infection through the body. According to published research in Frontiers in Cardiovascular Medicine in 2025, the hallmarks of aging include genomic instability, telomere shortening, epigenetic alterations, loss of proteostasis, mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular senescence, stem cell exhaustion, and altered intercellular communication. All of these mechanisms work together to drive the physical decline we call getting old. And critically, all of these mechanisms are written into DNA. The speed at which your telomeres shorten, the efficiency with which your cells detect and repair DNA damage, the rate at which senescent cells accumulate in your tissues, all of these are influenced by your genetic code. The rate at which your body ages is not random. It is, to a very significant degree, a product of your genes. This is what makes Bezos' investment so directly connected to DNA science. Altos Labs is not trying to treat the symptoms of aging. It is trying to go to the source, to the cellular and genetic level, and push aging cells back toward a younger state. That is exactly what the Yamanaka factors do. They do not treat a symptom. They alter the gene expression programs running inside the cell itself. Now, here's the piece of this story that tells you something important about Jeff Bezos specifically, because his investment in Altos Labs was not his first investment in this field. He had already been here before. Bezos had previously invested in Unity Biotechnology, a San Francisco-based startup that was pursuing a different but related approach to aging. Unity was working on what scientists call senolytics, drugs designed to selectively kill senescent cells. The idea was straightforward. If aging is partly driven by the accumulation of damaged cells that refuse to die and keep poisoning the tissue around them, then drugs that specifically destroy those cells could slow or partially reverse the process. Unity's early science was promising enough to attract serious investors, including Bezos and PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, but the clinical trial of their lead drug targeting osteoarthritis, a disease heavily driven by senescent cell accumulation in joint tissue, failed to meet its primary endpoint at 12 weeks in a phase 2 trial. Unity's share price dropped 60% in a day. The drug did not work as hoped in humans, even though the underlying biology was sound. This is important context. Bezos did not run away from aging science after that disappointment. He went deeper. He moved from a company targeting one specific symptom of aging to a company trying to address the root molecular cause. That is a pattern consistent with how he thinks about everything. You do not give up on the direction, you find a better approach. And Altos Labs, with its $3 billion and its Nobel laureates and its focus on cellular reprogramming rather than symptom management, is that better approach. The financial logic of this investment is also worth understanding because it tells you something about how Bezos processes risk. One of the things he has spoken about publicly is what he calls regret minimization. Early in his career, when he was deciding whether to leave his well-paid job at D.E. Shaw to start Amazon, he asked himself, "When I am 80 years old and I look back on this moment, will I regret not having tried?" He decided he would. So he quit, packed his car, and drove to Seattle. Amazon made him the richest person in the modern world. He applied the same framework to space. He sold approximately $1 billion of Amazon stock every year to fund Blue Origin, his aerospace company, because he believed that access to space was the long-term future of human civilization, and he would regret not working on it. Now the regret he is trying to prevent is arguably larger than anything he has faced before. Because the thing that limits how much Jeff Bezos can do, how much he can see, how many problems he can work on, is time, his own biological clock. And if there is even a meaningful chance that science can slow that clock or partially reset it, then for a man with $280 billion and a demonstrated history of betting on the long-term future, not making that investment would be the regret he could never come back from. Altos Labs' own stated mission is, in the words of its chief scientist Rick Klausner, to decipher the pathways of cellular rejuvenation programming to create a completely new approach to medicine, one based on the emerging concepts of cellular health. The company publicly describes its goal as improving health span, the number of years a person spends in good health, not just alive. As Altos Labs themselves have put it, longevity would be an accidental consequence. Whether you believe that framing or not, the science underneath it is real. The biological reprogramming of aged cells back to a younger state has now been demonstrated in living animals, not in a lab dish, not in a computer model, but in actual living creatures with actual aging bodies. The lifespan extension seen in the 2024 Altos study is documented and published. The restoration of vision in aged mice using reprogramming is documented and published. The direction is scientifically credible. Now, let us be fully honest about where this science is right now. Because serious, monetizable content does not exaggerate, and neither do we. Every study so far has been done in animals, primarily mice. The jump from a successful result in a mouse to a safe and effective therapy in a human being is one of the longest and most difficult journeys in all of medicine. Many drugs and treatments that work beautifully in mice fail in humans, sometimes because the biology is different, sometimes because the side effects are too dangerous. The Yamanaka factor c-Myc, for example, is associated with cancer when it is overexpressed, which is one of the major safety hurdles the researchers have to solve before full reprogramming can ever be considered in humans. Altos Labs and others in the field are working on approaches that use only partial reprogramming, enough to push cells toward a younger state without fully erasing their identity or triggering cancer risk. Judith Campisi, one of the world's most respected biogerontologists, has been clear in her public statements. Aging is not one disease, but a systemic, multifactorial process. There is no magic pill yet. The field has already seen setbacks, including Unity Biotechnology's clinical trial failure. Overhyping longevity science could lead to public disillusionment if breakthroughs take decades to materialize. These are honest, important warnings from people who know this field deeply. And at the same time, the same scientific community acknowledges what the published data shows. Partial cellular reprogramming has extended lifespan and improved health in living animals. That is real. The question is not whether the biology is real. The biology is confirmed. The question is how long it will take to translate safely into human beings. The global financing for longevity companies reached approximately $8.5 billion across 325 investment deals in 2024 alone, according to Longevity Technology's investment report. This is not fringe money. This is the serious capital markets concluding that aging science has moved from the fringe into real territory. Bezos, as he has done before in e-commerce and in space, appears to have arrived early. The most interesting question this story raises, and the one that connects most directly to what this channel is about, is not really about money. It is about what DNA actually is. Most people think of DNA as something fixed. You're born with it. It tells your body how to build itself. And then you are stuck with whatever it gives you. But the science behind Altos Labs is telling a different story. The science is saying that the instructions your DNA contains are not just a fixed set of commands. They are a set of programs. And those programs can, at the cellular level, be reset. Epigenetics, the study of how the chemical marks on top of your DNA switch genes on and off, is one of the fastest moving areas of biology in the world right now. Published research in a 2025 paper in the journal MedCom confirmed that compared with genetic information itself, the loss of epigenetic information plays a core role in the regulation of aging. In other words, your DNA sequence may not change as you age, but the pattern of which genes are switched on and off changes dramatically. The instructions get scrambled, and cellular reprogramming is essentially an attempt to restore the original pattern, to wipe the scrambling and reinstall the settings from when the cell was young. This is the science that Jeff Bezos has spent $3 billion to advance. And this is why the title of this video is not an exaggeration. Rewriting your DNA does not mean changing the letters of your genetic code. It means resetting the biological programs that your DNA runs, the programs that tell your cells whether to behave like young, healthy, energetic cells, or like old, damaged, senescent cells that have stopped working properly and started poisoning the tissue around them. Bezos is betting that this reset is possible, not just in a mouse, not just in a lab dish, in a human body, maybe eventually in his body. There is one more dimension to this story that puts everything in context. Bezos is not alone in this race. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has invested in Retro Biosciences, a company pursuing a similar cellular reprogramming approach that is aiming to add 10 or more years to human health. In January 2025, Retro and OpenAI jointly unveiled a specialized AI model built for protein engineering, which designed enhanced variants of the Yamanaka factors, versions that achieved a 50-fold increase in the efficiency of cellular reprogramming while also improving the cell's DNA damage repair. 50-fold. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a completely different level of capability. Google co-founder Larry Page funded Calico Labs in 2013, a research and development biotech company focused on understanding and addressing the biology of aging. Peter Thiel, the PayPal co-founder and Palantir chairman, has been one of Silicon Valley's earliest and most public supporters of life extension research, and was another co-investor with Bezos in Unity Biotechnology. Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan co-founded the Breakthrough Prize, which awards $3 million annually to aging scientists who make, in the prize's own words, transformative advances toward understanding living systems and extending human life. The richest and most forward-thinking people alive are, almost universally, investing in the same direction. Not in drugs that treat specific age-related diseases, in the fundamental biology of aging itself, in the molecular programs that your DNA runs, and the question of whether those programs can be reset, whether they succeed in the next decade, or whether it takes 50 years, or whether the technical barriers turn out to be even harder than the science currently suggests. The investment is real, the science is real, and the direction it is pointing is one of the most profound in the history of medicine. Jeff Bezos has built more than almost any person alive. He has conquered commerce, logistics, cloud computing, and space. He has held the title of the world's richest person. He has married the woman he loves in Venice with half of Hollywood watching. And now, in the fourth quarter of his life, The thing he is spending his energy and his billions on is not another product, another company, or another frontier. It is time itself. The one resource even $1 trillion cannot simply purchase. The one frontier that, so far, no human being has ever crossed. The DNA science says it might be possible. Bezos is betting that it is, and the Nobel Prize-winning team he has assembled to find out is the most serious attempt in human history to answer the question. If you made it this far in this video, you are exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. Real science, real genetics, real stories about the DNA secrets that drive the most extraordinary people alive. No guesswork, no filler, just the evidence. Subscribe right now so you never miss what we cover next. Drop a name in the comments. The next person whose DNA we break down might be the one you just suggested. Thank you for watching. The science is real, and the race to rewrite aging has already begun.